Welcome to the European Ham Radio Show, everyone. And we ended last week's show by saying that we weren't sure what we were going to do today. And then Wes down, let's see if we can point the right way. Mr. Mud here sent me a message and asked if he could be on the show. So we said yes. And we're going to talk a little bit about strange antenna contraptions. We're going to talk a little bit about doing HF in an international airport and ham radio in Canada. First of all, the ham radio moment of the week. And Tobias, what's your ham radio moment of the week?
My ham radio moment was a ham radio Saturday. As usual, my moments are rare. And I played a bit with this STM microcontroller that I told you about.
Can we embiggen that, Morten?
Yeah, I can embiggen. I'm trying to produce several things at the same time. So there you go, Tobias.
So as you can see, I managed to wire up the IPS display to this microcontroller and got some software running on it. And well, for one thing, this soldering these flat cables to these adapters was a bit challenging. And the other interesting bit was moving a few resistors around and closing a few solder bridges so that all the pins end up correctly mapped onto this, well, by default, it comes configured Arduino Nano compatible, but if you want certain pins, then you can, open jumpers and close jumpers, and then you get different pins on the output. And, well, on the backside, it looks a bit like a mess, but hey, it's all good fun. So that was my ham radio moment.
I think if we have some viewers that don't know, you should probably tell them what that is supposed to be.
Oh, right. See, I put the mention in the video, but it's behind my name. So hang on a second. Let me move the...
I'm going to embiggen you again.
Do some fancy production. And this is the author of this beauty. That's basically a IPS display replacement for the Kenwood TH79E. So this basically, you rip the defect LCD display out, and then you put a microcontroller and this IPS display in, and then you have a working handset again. So far, the theory. And all credits go to this YouTube channel. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I put it here so that everybody can look it up. And there's a video series on that channel, how he basically assembled that. And I'm just following in his footsteps here.
So
and that is impressive, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a saying that says, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I think you're living up to that standard perfectly there.
And I just got to ask the regular question, Tobias. At this point, when doing this, is the new Kenwood or the old Kenwood the most expensive radio by this point?
It's still the new Kenwood. It's still PHT75 is still more expensive, yeah. Because you can get all these bits and bobs from AliExpress, so it's okay. So quick question on the side to the viewers: how over-modulated and loud I am. Something has changed, and I'm not sure if I'm overdriving.
Fine as always.
5.9.
Yeah, I'm always fine in the studio. I'm not sure if I'm fine for the listeners, but they will tell me in the chat.
And I just see
ham radio moment of the week.
Yeah, I see we have a new viewer here. I haven't seen him on. Everyone's favorite Canadian POTA hunter, Steve. VE1SK is on.
Hey,
hi, Steve.
Hey.
Welcome.
So always great. I got Steve in the log today with 5 watts, and that's always a pleasure. He's the one sure DX station that I always get. So that's, but I'm impressed at what you're doing with that radio, Tobias, that you're able to actually make stuff work that way. I could not have been
yet,
able.
But it's just tinkering around, right? You should not set yourself the target of it must be finished at that date and it must be perfect. You just, tinker along and see where it goes.
I think that the clue is to start ham radio projects, not necessarily finish ham radio projects.
Oh, I have lots of started and not finished projects. That's not a problem.
Who doesn't? Exactly.
So over to Canada then. Wes, or is it Mr. Mud? What do you prefer?
You know what? You can call me whatever you want, but yeah, don't call me that. Mr. Mud is fine. And Tobias, I love that project is awesome. extra points if you get that through airport security. I want to see that.
And if you do, let us know how you do it.
Just to play it safe, you might want to just tape it to the side of your stomach, just so that
Yeah,
it doesn't look
create a
suspicious.
countdown on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that is
always
great.
suggest spiral cables, so that's always good.
I have seen
Yeah.
enough bad TV shows that I know that a bomb always has a countdown timer on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So into
what's-
Canada, you know what? I got something I could brag about. I guess I brought the truck here, the Potamobile, also nicknamed Toy Pota, if you could say that properly. But I'm in the truck here, and of course I brought a couple things. You guys probably seen the video on my mag mount hack.
yeah, with the
Saying that I did.
built-in ballon.
Yeah, so I've been playing with this thing a little bit, and if where's the camera? There's the camera. This thing has been
think
working like a charm.
That's probably the best idea to get rid of that dodgy coax connection in that tripod, right?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
problem
exactly.
is fixed now, once and forever.
So this is, I don't know if I could do this one-handed or not, but I've been playing with this guy a little bit, and I made it modular. So I'm gonna pop this out. So I have this little gizmo here. Here's my 1-to-1 choke. I've been playing with putting a loading coil, everyone's favorite thing. So I made a little loading coil that plugs into this thing. And if I could plug it in with one hand, of course, it's a little hard here. So now I got a loading coil on this thing, and I'm using my CB whip on 15. I've been working on 15, 17 meters. I got it almost tweaked on 20, just by the number of wraps inside. Instead of adjusting your coil height, you just got one whip, and you just throw in the proper loading coil, and there you are. You got on another band. Super inefficient. I'm not saying this is a great antenna. It absolutely sucks because all your power is reading this little guy here, but it stays nice and warm, right? So that's kind of one of my projects I've been working on in the last little while, of course, with the 30 other ones that are half finished.
But that's an excellent project, and that allows you to, let's say, if you put a 49-to-1 on there, you could probably do, let's say, a vertical end fed halfway with a whip as well.
That would require a 20-meter whip.
Did you say a 49-to-1? Yeah, I also built one of those. So I stuck it on the top of my truck here, and I put a 66 or 64, I can't remember how many feet it is, wire, and I did a end fed half wave with this guy, and then I wasn't really having good results with it. I'm still working on it a bit, so I unplugged this and I threw the vertical back up. So it's a good project, you guys. I'm gonna post a little series on my YouTube channel, and I don't know, is it worth building these little tiny plugs, or do you just put them on coax? That's might get some arguments on that, but I really like the modular feature of this. It's kind of fun, it's a little fun little project.
I'm sure though, if you post this on Ham Radio Facebook, you'll have a lot of opinions.
Oh, I want to hear them.
But I just got an idea with that. If you do a 4-to-1 and one of those 25-foot whips, the 7.6 meter whips, you'll have a Rubikoff that's on a mag mount.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And these, it's the great thing about this is they unplug really quick, right? So you can really experiment around with these. You could throw them in and out, whatever way you want to do a quick band change. So that 4-to-1, that's a great idea. I got a couple extra of these. I'll build one. I'll post it to you next week.
Nice. I just got a couple of ideas for projects that I first got to start and then got to finish. But it'll be there on the big list of projects I want to do.
Yeah.
And Simon, welcome. What's your ham radio moment of the week?
Oh, well, I was going to say, I don't actually have a ham radio moment of the week. I finally got my trumpet out because I've got a few gigs coming up. So I thought that's my moment of the week, to get it actually out of the case. But apart from all of that, I do actually have something that I'm going to try and show. I'm going to try to present let me just see if I can share my screen here. Let me see. This video I did last week has absolutely gone bonkers. And I called this, this is basically further in line with what Wes is talking about, a loaded coil. And hang on one sec, there it is.
Yep.
And what I've done here, I'm not sure if you guys can see that.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the thumbnail I made, and I called this thing Medusa. So essentially, I used Anderson poles on this as quick disconnects, and I did 13 turns on 2-inch PVC, which turned a 17-foot whip into 40 meters. To be honest, I think there's a little bit much inductance. I think probably 12 turns would have been better. But the cool thing is then with the Anderson poles, I don't think I can zoom in on this, but I've got another video coming out. But anyway, the other thing that's cool is for getting 80, which is very inefficient because there's a lot of inductance there, I've done another 26 turns. So then I can use the quick Anderson pole quick disconnects to go from 40 to 80, and that's a total of 39 turns, and with a 17-foot whip. And it works. I don't know how well, but it's great for camping. It's a great fun little hobby, and I've just enjoyed doing this as an experiment. And I've got the Medusa 2.0 video coming out this week, and I will let the cat out of the bag. I'm going to add probably another 13 turns to this on 2-inch PVC, and then I should be able to get 160 meters. I have to make a QSO on 160, even if the guy is over at the end of the Poda Park or around the block. I don't care. I've got to make a contact on 160. So that's sort of what I've been working on. It's and what Wes. It's funny that Wes would agree with this. It seems very apropos at the moment that the hot topic on YouTube is loaded coils. Everybody seems to be building and it's building and buying loaded coils, and it just seems like there's a huge potential for us to go further down that rabbit hole. That's what I'm discovering.
Absolutely. And I think the loaded coil trend is something that kind of goes in waves, because when I started in the hobby about 5 years ago, loaded coils were absolutely a thing back then. And then they kind of disappeared, and end-fed half waves took over, and now it's back to loading coils.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to do a shout out to my buddy Marty, Mad Dog Coils in Queensland, VK4KC. Marty makes the fabulous Mad Dog Coils, and I've done a review on one, and it's the most beautifully built loaded coil I've ever seen. So if you're actually in the commercial market to buy one, and in euros, I think you can buy basically a 20 through 80 for less than 100 euros. So thank you. Thanks Morton. So Mad Dog Coils, Marty makes really good quality ones if you're so inclined to go down that commercial route. Yeah.
I've been looking at those coils, and they look really, really well constructed and well built. But I tend to use wire antennas. I got a couple of coil antennas, but I tend to use the wire antennas instead, usually.
Yeah.
Then again, I never use the same antenna 2 days in a row, so there's always an opportunity for more antennas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kjetil, what's your ham radio moment of the week?
Hard to pick. Like most of this last week, I've been traveling around in Belgium, France, Luxembourg, and over the border to Germany to do summits on there. And so that was fun. I did 11 summits. I got 70 points. So that's rather bad payment for that compared to what Bob does when he does some fancy traveling. And with the exception of one of them, that was mostly drive-tos, and that was really nice. So I got my silver level Mountain Explorer, which is 10 countries. I got a complete region of the POTA in a country, 2 parks. So that's not too hard.
I guess that's Luxembourg then.
That's Luxembourg, Wilts in Luxembourg. And I stood on the highest point in Belgium, which is a stairway from 695 to 700 meters. So really nice. I think the highlight maybe I used the JPC12 antenna, which I purchased for this trip for all of these activations, and that just worked perfectly. I had no issues at all, except for one place where the ground was frozen in Germany. But other than that, really nice. And I wasted so many kilos of luggage space on extra antennas that I didn't use, like 2 sets of backups.
But the
If you didn't bring them, you would have needed them. So
Oh yeah,
thanks
of
for
course.
doing that. Yeah.
The JPC12 antenna is a great antenna once you spend at least 3 YouTube videos learning how to tune it.
I didn't. I just watched them.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned in the green room before this stream, I had one fun experience flying home again. We're going through security where the security guard saw my G90 and thought he had stopped like the biggest terrorist leader in the world. Like you could see it in him. He had saved the world single-handedly. And he looked at this radio from all edges and bomb swapped it and made a lot of fuss and called over his supervisor to get it checked out. And the supervisor was just meh and left again.
Why are you bothering me with this?
Yeah. So that was fun. The first time I've had issues with the radio itself. So,
but it's not. It's always part of the flying experience to have some part of your kit checked at some point.
Oh yes. So like nothing else was cared about. Just the radio, and that was one guy who didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, I can give one point of advice. Try to coil your cables nicely and just don't leave them as a bundle on top of your radio. That also catches some attention. Bob, any good ham radio moments this week?
Yeah, there's been a bit more. Let's see. Yeah, I managed that all by myself. That's not bad. A few good ham radio moments. I got this. This is a combined VNA and spectrum analyzer, and goes up to 1.5 gigahertz. I got that quite a few months ago, but I put aside the project that I bought it for, and I thought it was about time to bring it back out. And so I decided to measure some of the filters that I use for LoRa APRS. And I'll just quickly show you this. I got this from China. It cost probably less than a postage stamp, and it's actually doing a fairly good job if you look at the angle of the fall off there. But it's really, really, really wide. Let's see if we can see it. More than 23 megahertz wide is for a bandpass filter for 70 sems, and that's not perfect. And then our friend Mihai, Lima Bravo 9 Hotel India, he was in Romania and got this one and brought back for me. I think he sent some to you as well, Morten.
Yeah, he sent one to me too. So I was going to ask, did you measure that one and see how
Yes, I did. And that is much nicer. That is about 7.5 megahertz wide. Could of course be a lot better, but you'll also see that it's a lot. It's got a lot more attenuation. This goes down to minus 50 dBs. So quite excellent filter. So I put that in place, and I'm hoping that it's not going to be blown by the 100 milliwatts coming out of the LoRa board. Hasn't so far. Seems to be working fine. And other than that, that was. There was a big hype on YouTube about a year ago on the H3 radios, and I'm not too fond of hypes, so I didn't bother to follow up on it. But there's been some developments. There's this British guy that now is creating a new firmware for it, so I thought I'd check out these radios. So I got 2, and I'm started to characterize them. And the first thing to do is, of course, to check the battery capacity, if it's anywhere near what is stated on the battery. And to do that, you need to discharge at what you call 0.1C, which is 1/10 of the capacity. And if the battery actually lives up to what's stated on the label, then that's going to take at least 10 hours. And I'm happy to report that so far, the first battery that I managed to test, that actually had 5% more capacity in it than what was on the label. So good job to TID Radio this far.
And that's the TH8, isn't it?
No, that's a H4. H3, sorry.
H3. Have you tested it on a spectrum analyzer?
That is to come. I don't want to spoil too much of that.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but at least mine is not anywhere near clean. Let's put it that way.
I'm not finished yet, but it's not looking bad. It's not looking bad at all, actually.
Okay, maybe it's just mine though, because I've seen a lot of videos where it's clean. Mine was not. So my video, since I got that radio sponsored, I focused on how easy it is to program it through Bluetooth instead.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that as well. And the TID Radio has been fairly good at updating the firmware for it, which I think is interesting. So I'm going to update the firmware on them. And the reason I got two is to actually able to do analyze the what's coming out of both of them to minimize the chance of me just being lucky and getting a good one. And also I'm going to install the alternative firmware on one of them, and I can compare them. So as long as I have one original and one with the new firmware, I can compare the two and see what comes of it. So it's probably going to be a longish project because things like that, testing a battery capacity, it takes an awfully long time. For safe measure, I done about 9 hours of that test, and I just moved my computer slightly, and that dislodged the USB cable between the computer and the electronic load beneath, so I had to start that all over. That was what does Vince call it? Potty mouth that appears when that happens.
Yeah, you are thorough though in your testing. That's got to be said. That's
part of the point, because I don't think a lot of the other tests have been really thorough. They've been scratching the surface, but if I'm going to do this, I'd like to do it properly. So,
I can say firsthand, if a radio is sponsored, the review is not necessarily that thorough if you find things that are wrong with the radio during your testing.
These are not sponsored, and they're really inexpensive radios, and to hold one in your hand, it's a really nice appliance. We'll see how well I like to use it, but it's a really nice appliance to hold in your hand. So I have a great belief in these radios. But the big news, at least for me, after 2 weeks now, really bad back and not being able to go outside, I was able to go outside today, and I did a summit. This is Lima Alpha Bravo Uniform 012, I think, Ringkollen. It's about 700 meters above sea level, and as you can see, high enough to be above the clouds, not the cloud in the sky, sunny. That was a really, really, really nice activation today. And so happy to be out on the mountains again after I threw my back out shoveling snow. So, that was probably quite a bit, but that was it from my part.
That was a couple of ham radio moments of the week.
Indeed.
And I guess it's my turn then. I also have a couple of moments. I'm going to try to keep it relatively short. First of all, I got my All-Star hotspot up and running again, which required shuffling around some pies and soldering some GPIO pins on a pie. And it turns out that when you're at the age where you get eyeglass or reading glasses, those actually help when you solder. Help a lot. I've always been bad at soldering, but when I actually could see where I soldered, that helped a whole lot. So managed to do that, get both DMR and All-Star hotspots up and running on Friday. So we have not only our own European Ham Radio Show DMR talk group, but we also have an All-Star node. And let's see if we can find the number for it. If not, looks like everything's frozen except for StreamYard now. So I'll find that later on. Then I've done 2 POTAs this weekend. I met up with another ham yesterday. I was going to show him what POTA was like. Band conditions were not optimal yesterday, let's put it that way. Managed 18 QSOs in an hour on 5 watts. So not too impressed with that. Used Colin MM0 OPX as a just-to-wave end-fed half-wave. And that's truly an amazing end-fed half-wave to just be able to have it mono band end-fed half-wave for whatever band you'd like between 40 and 10. Makes everything so easy. Tested that out. Went out today with 5 watts. Cheap Chinese NFET half wave. Had a pile up on the first CQ. Got 2 DX. Got Victor Echo 1 Sierra Kilo. And then November 8 Tango in Michigan. So it's been a good ham radio weekend. Didn't do the projects I planned to do this weekend, but I got to do a couple of other projects. So that's good. And that video on Colin's NFET half-wave concept is just taking off at the moment. I guess calling it the best antenna concept you can't buy is probably a good idea. Makes people click.
And the rest of the video makes them stay, so that's an important bit.
Yeah, that is just as important. But I guess that's my ham radio moments of the week. It's that time of year where the weekdays are just not light enough to be able to do anything after work, and weekends just fly by. But let's go on to our topic of the week, and that's ham radio in Canada. And I don't know which one of you guys want to start to talk a little bit about Canadian ham radio. I guess Wes is first one out.
Well, and he's the real Canadian. I've got the Aussie accent.
I just thought that was some regional Canadian accent. No one could spot the Aussie accent in there.
Yeah, I could start. What, ham radio in Canada? Yeah, well, that's what when you asked me to come on and talk about ham radio in Canada, I didn't want to really be biased with where I'm at, because I'm in Canada. Obviously, I'm located in Saskatchewan, right in the middle of Canada, and I didn't want to get the perception of Canada being cold, which it is. I think it's like minus 39 Celsius wind chill. Believe it or not, it's cold out there right now. I wanted to bring Simon on because Simon, sometimes I want to punch him because his temperatures. Yeah. What are you at?
6 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
summer.
Let me look. Yeah, you're warm now. Let's see what. So it's windy. We do the wind chill thing.
Yeah.
Minus 18, and it feels like 32. So
Nice.
So yeah, that's a little chilly. So that's when your coax cracks, right? So there's a lot of difficulties playing radio in this weather. We got one thing, you can't put a ground spike in. It's just too cold. The snow is sometimes deep, or it's not deep enough to stick a post, and it's not going to hold anything up. So, very innovative. I've seen you guys with a couple of your products with clamps. I've made my own clamp to clamp onto a tree or a post or something. Mag mounts, and after operating outside, I do occasionally go outside of the truck and do stuff. It is all the wires and everything are frozen. You can literally snap them. So it's just a big mess. My truck, all the coax is just a big rat's nest of wires thrown back in. You don't even attempt to try coil them up, right? But as in for DX and all that, I'm located in a great spot. I'm right in the center. So if you look at my, let's say, POTA spread, I hit all of North America on 10 meters. I'll just get all the way from up in California all the way down to Texas, all the way back up to New York into the east coast of Canada. So it is nice, but there isn't a lot of hams around me right in the nearby area. So 40 meters is, hit and miss. I just usually, the HF is my go-to for playing radio. Not a lot of local hams in the area.
So, but the cold, of course, raises some, I won't say problems, but there are some challenges with operating in cold weather. I guess Simon, with his Norwegian summer temperatures over in British Columbia, has it a lot easier than we do. Although Norway doesn't really get that cold, at least most of Norway.
I've been out in minus 20 before, and that is, as he says over there, it's hard on the cables. They just snap.
Yeah.
And operating, I did my first POTA in minus 18, I think, with a 9 amp hour lead acid battery and a Yaesu 450. That I made my 4 QSOs, and that was it.
I think I've done a summits on the air activation down to -25, but there was absolutely no wind, and that makes the difference. That makes that possible.
Yeah.
Low humidity and no wind, you can handle -25 easily. But I was actually thinking about this today, and having Canadians on, it's excellent, because I was also feeling that the coax, I was using some RG174, I think, thin coax, just a few meters from the 705 to the matchbox on the antenna. But can we get some coax? Is it possible to buy something that's more pliable in really cold conditions? And do we know what that is?
There is, but you know what? I kind of go. Of course, I'm cheap, so everyone knows me. I'm cheap. I make everything. If I could make my own HF radio, which you probably could. But I'm also lazy, so I'm kind of some mix. but with it's just a bad situation to be in. But with coax, I usually just use the cheap stuff, and when it snaps, I throw it away, or I make a project out of it, and I just use some other stuff. I just feel that anything is going to break at this temperature, even the expensive stuff. And I don't feel so bad when I break a $20 piece of coax and a $200 piece, you know?
But if you spend the 2.5 hours walking up a mountain, you're going to feel bad if your coax breaks before you get to activate.
Yeah, that would be a bad one. But, you know, I do have well, you know what? We don't have mountains here, so I don't have to worry about that. Let's see here. I'll grab my camera here. There's a mountain right there. That's one of our highest peaks right there. But no, we got a few things. But in the prairies here, I'm gonna lose my camera here right away. In the prairies, no. But I understand with having some backup with your equipment. I do carry a number of little repair kits and stuff if something would break. So I've had broken a coax. Busted a power pole connector, and that's when you need to have your little kit with you, right? And I'm sure you guys could all share those experiences. Heading out.
The fun part is when you hear people asking you, "Are you having overheating issues with the radio?" Doesn't get that warm in summer.
I heard some rumors about the X6100 overheating. I've never experienced that with mine. When a day in July can be 3 degrees and 25 meters per second wind factor, overheating radios is not an issue.
Okay, can I interject and add a quick little funny snippet into that?
Yeah,
Has anybody? I'm sure everybody's got the ICOM, or a lot of you have the 7300. Now, are we even convinced that the thermostat on that radio is even hooked up? I mean, has anybody ever seen it go above one bar? I know Wes was going to do a test, weren't you, Wes?
I did, Simon. Yeah, so I wanted to bust that myth. So I took my 7300 and I took it all apart. I took the covers off and I took the boards off. I downloaded the factory service manual to see all the components, and I'm trying to look through all the components to see what will be a thermistor or some kind of component. Yeah, I got a lot of time on my hands, you know. So I'm looking for that, and I found one area of the radio that had possibly near one of the transistors, MOSFETs that might be the thermistor, and I started going around with my what do you call it, the soldering tool, the hot air gun, on a low heat, and this seriously took about a case of beer, because I had to drink a lot of beers while I was doing this, and I'm going back and forth, slowly sweeping the board with my hot air gun, trying to get that little meter to move up. And this is live too, guys, by the way. I had my radio on and all apart, right? And I'm going and I'm waiting for that. And Simon, that is fake. That is just a little, that light does do nothing, because it hasn't moved on me in my life. So if anyone in the chat or on this could prove me wrong, where is that little, because I wanted to make the ultimate YouTube videos and prove the theory, and I couldn't really prove it. And
I know how to test that simply. Like, you know what a campfire is, right? Just put it like on a grill on top of that and see if it lights up.
Are you referring to the reason Retivus will never sponsor a channel?
Yes.
Yep. And Chris, Victor Echo 6, Yankee Echo Alpha. super chatted 279 Canadian, and I'm not sure how much Canadian dollars are at the moment, but they're probably a little bit less than the US dollar. But thank you, Chris. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
But, yeah, Kjetil, I don't know if the guests have seen your video where you test out how much a Retivis DMR radio can handle.
That's not relevant for this one, but it is cool to see some others that have some good winter operating experience. Like, do you guys like operate in any kind of weather over there, or is there some weather where you like say it's too cold or too windy or too snowy or too many polar bears or whatever?
Yeah, no, the worse it is, the better it is.
Yeah.
I had all these dreams of going out. I started doing YouTube videos, and I'm like, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna capture the Canadian experience going out in the cold and working on this. Now, ham radio for one thing, when you're trying to work your equipment, your radio and all that is one thing. Trying to capture that with your cameras and your microphones, next to impossible. My phone literally, I was using my phone one time, and my phone lasted for 5 minutes. And then it went to zero charge and went and froze. And so the phone didn't work. I got some GoPro cameras. They worked better. They weren't the best, but they did capture. They survived the cold. But it's really hard to mic up. So why you don't see a lot of these winter videos of us doing these extreme things, Simon could add to that, in the rain and all that, is our equipment. It's really hard to actually capture that and document it.
Well, Wes, I remember skiing. Well, we'll get on to the fact that I lived in Whistler for so many years. But I remember one time having a new phone and one ski out when it was, to get the hell off the mountain. It was about 15 below with wind chill, probably minus 20, and they shut Blackcomb down. But by the time I skied down, my battery in my breast pocket was completely flat from the cold air.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've also done some really minus 25, 30 degrees activations, and it does kill batteries quite quickly. And you have to be mindful about where you put them. Like actually keep them on your body while you're walking out there if you want to get on air. But equipment-wise or dress-wise, it's not a problem if you're used to it.
Yeah, I can handle.
I
can handle the cold.
I would guess that, as you said, use the GoPro if you want to document this, because my GoPro that indoors, that's going to record about 5 minutes before it overheats and
exactly.
Shuts down.
I was going to say the same thing.
Overheat.
GoPros are ideal for cold weather because they tend to overheat.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't know that. I go to something every day.
Yeah, but there's some other interesting facts as well.
I have a quick question. Sorry. It's hard to get in when you are all on a go. I was wondering, did you ever have problems with touch screens, like the IC705? Because I remember vividly one business trip to South Korea, and it was ice cold, and it was so dry, and it was so ridiculously dry that the resistive touchscreen stopped working. Yeah.
Wow.
So there was not enough humidity, and that touchscreen just didn't work anymore. Yeah. Back in Germany, everything back to normal. Yeah. So maybe Bob, you're the 705 user. Did you ever have problems with it?
I'm not really a touchscreen type of person, so I don't think, other than changing bands, if I'm not on 20 meters when I start, I don't use the touchscreen much on activations on 705. But are you sure that was the screen and not just your hands drying completely out, and that was the reason?
But it's a resistive touchscreen, though.
In theory, it's
not a
the
capacitive
mechanical connection between the top foil and the bottom foil, right? No,
Yeah.
I think so.
No,
I don't think dry hands should have an impact. I don't know.
Yeah.
Please correct us in the chat. I might be talking nonsense.
I've had the 705 out in probably close to 20 and below at least, and never had a problem. I can't remember, but as I said, unless it's not on 20 when I start, which is not what it normally is, I don't use anything on the touchscreen for normal operations.
Yeah,
I've had problems with
don't like to touch my screen and have fingerprints all over. So I really prefer that it has buttons on the left side and on the right side.
Yeah.
So one thing I learned with winter POTA and all that out operating. I have a 7300 at home, and then I use a Yaesu 891 for my POTA operations. And I got one, of course, I'm in the POTA-mobile. What I've done is I divorced the head on it. So I took it off, and I use my, and this, I've been running this for the last year now, separated, and I found in winter activations, this little guy fits inside of your pocket. So you can put it inside and warm it up. You can lock the screen, and if you want to do anything, you can do your little adjustments, and you can throw it back inside your jacket, right? And there's no touch screens on this one, so it makes a very good POTA rig, in my opinion. It has frozen up though, where I've turned it, and nothing. The screen basically is just frozen, right? So
yeah, minus the 30-ish will do that to LCDs. So like
Yeah,
I had
exactly.
a Yaesu FD2DE, and that like minus 20 or so, that the crystals started freezing on that one, and you could see it lag when you tried to switch frequency.
Yeah, and some displays are even worse than that. I used my FAVA2 antenna analyzer today. It was about -5.
Yeah,
and that was enough for that LCD to not update properly. So you don't necessarily need those extreme temperatures for it to freeze up.
And Simon, you were last year, Simon, you were in Australia, and your phone overheated, didn't it?
All the time.
All the time.
Direct sun. Every activation I did where I went live, whether it was my iPad or my phone, in the direct sun, just so intense. And I think there are queries about the fact that there's a diminishing ozone layer over Australia. Whether there's truth to that matter or not is still to be proven. But every time it was in direct sun, Wes, for 5 minutes, it's like, you get the temperature gauge warning, and it's just gone. It's like the screen of death, right? Yeah.
Well, I've never seen that. I've seen the phone is too cold warning, but never that the phone is too hot.
That does not happen in Norway.
You just need to leave it in the sun for half an hour, and then it comes up with a pop-up slowing down. Looks like it's getting hot here or something.
I see that when I inductively charge and have it on the dashboard in the sunlight, even in Norwegian temperatures. That does it for at least for my iPhones. Get that warning then. But I have a question for Simon, because you've had that happen in Australia, and now you live in Canada. What do you think what do you prefer? Too cold or too hot? For radio, for portable radio.
Oh, mate, I don't know. You know what? I've actually I've done some activations in Ningaloo and in the outback, in the desert of northwestern Western Australia, and holy smokes, it was hot. You know what? I actually think, to be honest, I actually think that it's probably harder on gear in the extreme heat. I don't know. It's as far as activating goes. You know what? It's neither is ideal. Like if one extreme is there and the other
Let's
is there.
say 23 degrees Celsius.
Oh, that's beautiful,
ideal, right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Tobias, absolutely all day long. But when it's 43, no. But you know what? But you know what? Now there's a sort of a bit of a caveat to this. So Wes, he's in the middle of Canada. I lived in Whistler, which is basically the ski resort. Half of a lot of Norwegians who I met there, who were the fittest people in the world because of Nordic skiing, lived and train in Whistler. Lots of Aussies, of course, but because of the proximity to the Pacific Ocean, it's a very damp air. And I've got my wife's family are from Alberta, and they say they come to BC and to Vancouver or Victoria or Vancouver. Oh my gosh, it's 6 degrees, but it's absolutely bloody freezing because it's damp. And meanwhile, it's 20 below with dry air in Alberta. So I actually think that the humidity factor, it potentially would have a little bit of I don't know if it would be a positivity.
Sorry, mate. Sorry to interrupt. I
No, no,
said damp heat is as unpleasant as damp cold, right? I think
Oh,
Exactly.
once the
Yeah.
humidity gets up, you really don't want to be there anymore.
well,
Yeah.
I've been in Germany in August playing jazz on the Frühstuppens on the Rhine, and you're just dripping. You know, it's terrible, the humidity. No, it's
Yeah.
you know what? It's you just can't get any relief from the moisture for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
But where I
I was
live
more
here,
thinking
usually-
about, Singapore, when it pours
Oh my
down
gosh,
and 5 minutes later, the tarmac is dry again, but you are not.
Yeah. And see, Steve. So Steve is what? How far are you away from me, buddy? I think he's over 4,000 kilometers from me, probably more like 5. And so he's way on the other side, over in Nova Scotia, way out on in Halifax. And I'm the most further western tip of Canada. And the issue, the common thread here is whether you're on the Atlantic or the Pacific is the humidity. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got to shoot in with a thanks to Chris here for another super chat, though. Thank you, Chris. It's greatly appreciated. And Chris got a question here. If anyone has any experience with the FX4CR, Bob, you're the guy for that radio, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm the one that put that up. I was just can inject quickly. These are two very, very different radios. There's absolutely nothing in the way of a tuner or and limited output protection on the FX4CR. I love that radio. I still have that radio, and I sold the X6100. That should tell you something about how I feel about them. But
Because you never
depending on
sell radios.
I almost never sell radio. I sold some at your Hamfest.
Yeah.
But completely different radios. So these two radios, they will do completely different things for you. So you need to figure out what's important. And when you figure out what's important, you'll know which one of these radios you want. Basically, what the FX4CR has going for it, it's extremely small, lightweight, and simple to bring along. If that's not really important to you, if you're not going to carry it for a long time, probably go for the other one. But I do think the other one costs about twice as much as well. So you might consider getting two FX4CRs. Personally, I'd prefer that.
I'm going to say another thing about it, which I kind of forgot. I'll remember that at some point. But I want to cycle a little bit back to a couple of things, Simon. First of all, the heat versus cold thing. A buddy of mine who has traveled a lot to Brazil always say that it's easier to put on more clothes because you always come to a point where you don't have any clothes to take off. So that is probably true regarding that hot versus cold environment. And my second question, you're a jazz musician, right? And I understood you tour a bit.
Yes, I've toured a lot actually. And I've never been to Norway, but I've played a lot of jazz festivals around Sweden and Denmark and a lot of the countries in Europe. So yes, I am a jazz musician.
But my question is, do you bring in radios when you tour?
No, because I've sort of got out of touring. Having a family now and. So this jazz festival was it's Châtel Guyon, which is right in the middle of France. I played there. Let me see, when was that? About 2005. So my daughter, 2009. So my daughter was literally 6 months old. So I think for the style of music, I sort of play more traditional jazz. So basically I don't really tour that much anymore, and I'm happy with that. I've sort of been there, done that. A lot of the festivals have dried up, and I didn't really get into ham radio until about 2012. But you know what, I'd like to, if I, next tour I do. But to be honest, Morten, if I'm going somewhere, I'd rather go touring and play ham radio than touring and have to keep the chops up and play jazz. Yeah.
And I could do a lot more jazz-related questions, but this is not the jazz channel, so we'll leave it at that at this point.
Absolutely. So can I add something? William made a comment about 300 ohm ladder line. So I lived in Whistler, which is it's basically 2 hours north of Vancouver. Big Whistler Blackcomb, very popular ski resort. Lived there for 13 years. And I had a basically an Envis dipole that was fabulous on 40 meters, but it was about 128 feet long. And for exactly that reason, William, I used 300 or 350 ohm ladder line because in winter, when there was a ton of snow, I mean, we're talking, you know, in the village or the valley of Whistler Blackcomb, you know, we've got 2 meters of snow at least on the ground, and you could get a meter of snow in 2 or 3 days, you know, when you get the big precipitation. And then you'd get the blistering cold where it could be, 25, 30 below with that wind chill. And the ladder line was fabulous. So I agree with you, mate. I think it's probably a little more resilient for a permanent antenna in those brutal climates. So
I use some ladder line. I have some for some projects. I have some 450 ohm ladder line, and that is solid copper core in it. I would think that would be pretty horrid at 25 below.
Yeah, but you can get them as stranded as well. I have both.
Yeah, absolutely. And my 300 ohm is multi-strand copper, and I think that would be quite nice even in cold temperature. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but ladder line, as for portable antennas, it tends to be a little bit more complicated than for permanent install at home.
Yeah.
At least to my experience, it's a little bit more hassle, even if you're just doing a G5RV or some kind of deviation from that.
Yeah.
Do you guys, since you like live in Canada with all of the Auroras and so, do you do like Aurora scatter on VHF, or do you do any kind of cool stuff with that kind of propagation?
Well, it's kind of limited. Whenever the Auroras come out, it really does knock out the HF bands, and you do get a little bit of skip, but it's so sporadic. It's interesting though. You could go from talking to somebody, getting a 5.9, to absolutely he's gone. It's like his antenna fell over, right, or your antenna fell over.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
So how far, like in degrees?
Well, we don't get many. Well, in BC, in Victoria, I think there's some number like 90% of Canadians' population live within 200 miles of the US border for obvious reasons. So we only get, in last year, I know Wes gets more in the prairies, but last year we only had, I think, 2, maybe 3 Auroras this far south. What about you, Wes? You sort of have to go further north than you, don't you, to really get a lot?
Well, it's not bad. I live in the city area, so it's a little. There's a lot of light pollution, so you could step out a few kilometers and you'll be fine. No, I grew up in the northern part of Saskatchewan, and I've seen a lot of them where it's almost to a point where it's almost like they're going to pick you up. That's how intense they are.
Wow.
They come down and. That feeling of when it's middle of winter, you're on a frozen lake, there's about 2 meters of frozen ice, and you're standing there, and it's absolutely quiet, not a soul around you, and you see the northern lights, and they're coming down and they're reflecting off the ice, and then the ice cracks.
Wow.
Not you don't fall into it, obviously, but it has that sound of that big bass crack sound in the roars. It's something that is on a lot of people's bucket lists, and I can see why. It's fun. It's really quite the experience.
Sounds amazing. But I think Kjetil wanted to know too. Morten and I, we're at about 59 degrees north. How far north are you?
Yeah, they are at 50 and 52. So they're
I'm actually at 48. I'm below the 49th parallel. So whoever drew that line must have been drunk, because if you look at the Gulf Islands of Western BC, it goes right down. So I'm actually almost due west of Seattle, probably more like further south in Bellingham. I think it's Everett, but I'm sort of like 48.6 or something like that north. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's roughly the same as the Netherlands in Europe.
Okay.
Yep.
So pretty far south. But it's interesting how much more auroras you seem to get over there than we get like here in southern Norway, because we have to travel far north to do that. But also recognize, like, suddenly the bands are dead. Like you're not getting anything through at all.
Like a switch. Yeah.
Or you hear people and they can't hear you. Like it's one-way traffic. Like it just doesn't work.
It is literally. I was on my 7300 and the scope was just lit right up, and I was having a QSO with someone in North America, and all of a sudden the scope just went to nothing, And I'm like,
Yep.
that is very odd. It was nighttime. I went and looked out to see if my antenna fell over, right? And I looked
Yeah.
up, and it was just the sky was lit up with auroras. It was basically just like that, like you said.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
then-
those sort of moments where just everything HF dies, pretty much.
See, that's the problem
It
where
does.
Morten and I live, and Kjetil as well. We do get the blackouts. We just don't get the light show. That's
A
Oh.
little bit, but not the same as up north, though. I remember my mom was from way up north, and I remember the winters there when I visited my grandparents, and the auroras were just magical. And my mom always said, like you said, Wes, that they're almost like they're come to get you. And my mom always said that you never wave at the auroras.
Yeah, or whistle.
Yeah,
But the cool thing here is that there are some people that do CW, which is Aurora scatter, or like they use that as a mirror. And I've listened to it a few times. It's really funky. Like it sounds like some ghosts doing CW. So that could be
Yeah.
fun to try.
Wow, yeah.
I've heard sideband as well reflected off Aurora, I think, and that's yeah. It sounds like
Yeah.
I think I described it as Hannibal Lecter on crack. That's yeah.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
scary.
you know, it is. And do you is there also a short path and long path during that phenomenon too? It's almost like it's almost a blend of the two, because you can almost hear that echo too, right?
Yeah, but I think the echo is due to the different paths when it's reflected from the aurora
Yeah.
itself, though, because the reflections are probably a little bit more unpredictable. I don't have any clue on what I'm saying here. I'm just guessing. So
I know
if
you.
anyone want to fact check me, feel free to do that.
It's like one of those a broken mirror or something, right? Your reflections just everywhere.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
That is what I actually think it is, but I actually don't have any facts to base my opinions on. So it's pretty much educated guesswork at this
Tim.
point.
Well, it's fine. That's us. We're hams, right?
Yeah,
I've had that twice, Morton, and my theory, and I know I'm completely wrong, and I actually was trying to explain this to my daughter. The phenomenon that I see it as is basically that's your signal going short and long path around the world, and you can hear, obviously the radio waves are traveling at the speed of light, and that echo is actually the long path, but you're also getting them short path. And I actually heard a guy when I was in Australia. I've got my Flex radio that I remote from here. It's down 150 kilometres northeast of Melbourne. And I think I was on 15 metres, and there was a guy north of Sydney who was booming in. So he was about 800 or 900 kilometres away on 15 metres. But I heard the echo, and he said, yes, that's because you're hearing me long and short path, which to me is mind-blowing. Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a very, very cool thing to do, and I'd say one more piece of proof that the Earth is in fact round, not flat.
Depends which hams you ask, though. There's a scaringly high number of hams that think that the Earth is flat.
They must get a different
They're all
book when they
BXs,
learn about
right?
propagation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also have an idea, and I might be wrong here as well, that if you're, let's say, inside the aurora zone, it's hard to get out of it, and opposite, you can't really get into the aurora zone with HF. It's kind of like a barrier, as far as I've understood it. I don't know if anyone has any actual knowledge on this.
Well,
Yeah.
certain bands, the noise floor will go up too. So when you
Yep.
start having a lot of activity, your noise floor will go to S9, and you just can't hear nothing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Or you
So-
can actually hear the aurora, like you can hear the waves and pulsations and so on. So
Yeah,
So that is kind of cool.
it is.
We are getting close to the hour mark, and I feel that we haven't even touched on ham radio in Canada that much, and we have not heard the story about how you got the idea of operating inside an international terminal.
Oh, well,
HF.
okay.
We
Let's-
got to
let's-
hear that before
okay, we can talk.
Before we
Yeah,
end the
so-
show.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, I travel a lot for work. My work sends me over into the United States mainly to do factory training. So, and I like to bring my ham radio gear with me. So I'm kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to have everything in my kit, my backpack, that I can operate. So if I'm in a plane crash, like I'm going to really grab my radio. But let's say I'm on a desert island somewhere. I got the radio, right? I even went over to the next guy to me. This is my sick humor. I'm like, if we crash, I got a radio. We could probably call somebody. They didn't like me very much. so I bring my radio with me all the time. That instance, I was in New York for about a week. I went around and did about 12, 15 parks around the just 40 miles north of New York City. All the parks. Had a great time playing POTA, and I met a couple other hams there. We went and played POTA. They had some connections with law enforcement and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I got some friends here now in high places, and I'm sitting at the airport. I'm like, I wonder what it would be like to actually, if I could transmit out of this airport and make a contact. So to cover my bases, I went to the flight at the desk and asked the TSA if it was right if I transmitted my radio in the airport here, and they said there's really no problem. Let me ask my supervisor. So they got their supervisor involved, and I showed them my gear. And I showed the security guards, can I transmit? I'll set up my radio here. I'm a license. I showed them my license, and they said, sure, that's fine. So I'm like, well, let's do it. And I'm like, well, why don't I just live stream it too? We'll take it up a notch.
Exactly.
So I live streamed it. I set up. Now, mistake number one, not the part in the airport. That's not a mistake, but I set up on the floor, and unfortunately, I was kind of like outside of the women's washroom, and I had my camera set up. So that was kind of a mistake. I had a lot of weird looks of people coming in and out of the washrooms. I think that's probably what got me at the end. So I set up. The guys who gave me permission were kind of looking at me side-eyeing.
Not on the washroom, right?
No. So good news is I got out to another ham in Spain using my tabletop HF antenna. I made a QSO. So it was over 4,000 kilometers away, 100 watts. This was the antenna setup I had used. Kind of see it. So I used an indoor antenna with a loading coil, got across to Spain, having a great time, live streaming it all. Then all of a sudden, I saw a couple cops coming. Then I saw the TSA, the airport security. Made me a little more nervous. But when the guy in the suit and the microphone came up beside him, I had to shut her down. But it was really awkward. I thought I was awkward. All the people that gave me permission were Team Mr. Mud, because their ass were on the line, right? Like they gave me the permission, and they're working with me to keep me from getting I don't know who's watching the show, so I'm not going to say anything about being body cavity searched and all that. None of that happened, but I didn't want to go there, and it was in the end. They were trying to take my radio equipment and stuff like that, and trying to put it, check it. In the end, they took my bag and they put it in the airplane at the front with the pilot. Safe spot for a bunch of radio equipment, right? Put it by the pilot, and
exactly. If something happens, it's only the pilot that has a problem.
But I went through security, right? And actually, when I went through security, this is not the first time I went through. I showed them everything I had, and security passed it. It's not illegal to bring your ham radio equipment on a plane if you know what you're doing. And I made a video about that on how to do it. So everybody was kind of awkward that this happened. So in the end, they just asked me not to operate. They put my radio and they took it, and they gave me my batteries because I couldn't to check my batteries on the thing, right? I had a paper bag with my batteries in. The sucker, it was just like a total movie. The bag broke in the airport line, and had some other half-bald guy help me put my battery back in my case. I was like, okay, thanks, dude. Hey, what's your number? It was just it was fun though. It was fun. I recommend to anyone, try it, but don't say I told you.
And I've seen the video as well. So if some of our viewers haven't seen the video, just look that up, because that is good entertainment.
It is. It is.
You should find it and link it in the video description.
Yeah.
I tried to find it this week, but I probably didn't spend enough time looking for that exact video. So, but if you just send it as a message to me, Wes, and I'll put it up in the video description.
Yeah, it's a fun video. Yeah, I had to edit it a bit. I do have the original live stream, but yeah, no handcuffs or anything like that. It's a fun video though. You guys can check it out.
Yeah.
Well, you asked, what more could you have done, right? I mean, if 3 people higher up the food chain change their mind, that's bad luck.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it is definitely really entertaining video to see. And on that note, we are 5 minutes over the hour now. I feel that we got to have you two on at some other point to actually ask the questions we wanted to ask, because this show went a little bit sideways today. So if you're up for it, we'll find a date and have you guys on later.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And there's also links to both of these guys' channels in the description. So if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do that. And can anyone remember what we agreed upon next week?
I think Rasmus is coming on, isn't he?
Rasmus is coming on to talk about all his radio projects. That's going to be fun.
Yes, and that's going to be proper radio nerding. So
that's going to be proper radio nerding. So I'm guessing that you and Tobias will do the talking, and me and Kjetil will probably shut up all the way through the stream, because we have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be room for everyone.
Yep. I usually have some opinions nonetheless, though. 2 weeks from this weekend is the Norwegian Ham Meeting, the biggest ham fest in Norway. If you're in Norway or close to Norway, you can come and look at us doing a live talk on this show and YouTube as the Modern Elmer. That's going to be Saturday at some point before Kjetil's got to catch a plane.
Yep.
We're not really sure about the time yet, but they'll come and we'll announce everything there. So that's Saturday in 13 days. So if you're close to the airport in Norway, feel free to attend.
The airport in Norway, the only one.
The airport in Oslo. Well, if you're flying into Norway, you're usually flying into Oslo.
Yeah.
73.
Expect a video from you guys.
There's going to be at least one video, and I've been thinking about live streaming the presentation as well. But I think we got a 15-minute window to set everything up, so I'm not really sure if it's feasible to do that. Anyhow, see you guys
Maybe
next
just
week.
Record it and upload it later.
Probably. Thanks to Wes and Simon for being on. Hopefully
Thanks,
we'll see you guys down the road
Thank
and
you, guys.
down the bands. 7-3.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
See you next
Fun.
week.
Thanks, guys.
7-3.